0. Hello, my DevNation friends from everywhere in the world. Thank you for coming to another Tech Talk. I'm Ezio Yanaga. I'll be your host today, and today we have a very special guest because Cedric, the OpenShift developer advocate intern, is going to present some awesomeness about how can you quickly and easily deploy your applications to Kubernetes using ODO version 2.0. So without any further delay, I'd like to point to you, Cedric. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Edson. I'm very happy to be here. Again, my name is Cedric Clyburn. I'm a OpenShift developer advocate intern here at Red Hat. I came on in the summer of 2020, and I've had the fortunate chance of being here in the fall, and I'm able to share with you what I've been discovering with ODO 2.0 and everything that's been released in the newest version, as well as going over some basic concepts for today. So we're going to talk about cloud native application development on OpenShift. So fortunately, if you haven't heard of me, my name is Cedric Clyburn. I've been on the Red Hat developer channel doing some getting started videos. Check out my Podman, my Builder, my Tekton videos if you haven't gotten the chance. But I'm super happy to be talking about ODO 2.0 because for developers like you and me, it's kind of difficult sometimes to get our projects running on a Kubernetes or OpenShift cluster. And ODO is an amazing, it's an iterative and straightforward CLI tool to essentially get our projects up there running not only on OpenShift, but Kubernetes, as this ODO 2.0 release covers not only Kubernetes, but things called dev files and a lot of other amazing features that I can't wait to get into today on our presentation. But real quick, I want to talk about our agenda for what we're going to be talking about. So we have a quick introduction. I'll give a little bit more information about myself and my background. We'll talk about ODO, a wide overview, but also new features that have came with this 2.0 release that are incredible, and they're going to help streamline your process for development. We're going to talk about dev files, which are portable development environments that you can recreate on any of your Kubernetes clusters. We're going to go hands in and create a front end with Node.js. It's going to be awesome. We're going to migrate a sourced image component from ODO 1.0, and we're going to get that to 2.0. So for any of you developers who have experience with ODO and have been using it over the past year, we're going to talk about how you can upgrade your components to a dev file and be able to use that on any of your Kubernetes clusters. And then finally, we're going to talk about that Minikube compatibility with Kubernetes. So I'll do a Minikube demo just to show that we have support for Kubernetes on this 2.0 release, which I think is incredible because people have always been asking us, why can't I get this running on my Kubernetes cluster? Well, now we have it. So a great talk we have for you today. And real quick, I want to give some more information about myself. I am a computer science student at NC State University, as well as an OpenShift developer advocate intern. I am the coffee intern, even though it's virtually. I can send the coffee through Slack as an emoji. My strengths are, right there. Edson has it. Crazy how that works. My strengths academically are through Java, but on the side, I love Node.js and JavaScript. So we're going to do a bit of both, a bit of Java and a bit of Node, just so this covers most people out there. And then finally, I want to talk about real quick, before the summer happened and before I had this internship, I had pretty much no experience with anything Kubernetes related. So no Docker, no Kubernetes, no OpenShift. So my perspective is completely fresh in the way that how I think about cloud native development is kind of how most people think about just developing locally. So when we talk about the inner loop of development here in a little bit, I'll be able to give you a different perspective than you're used to on how I think about it and how ODO can help you when it comes to that. So real quick, some resources for our talk today. If you're looking to install ODO or get some some tutorials on how to use it, please feel free to head to odo.dev, which is essentially the main website for the ODO program and project. From there, you can download your local binary for your operating system. Something unique about ODO is it's a command, it's a client-based program. So essentially, you're going to download it for your operating system. So for me, it's going to be Mac OS. I can easily install it. But if you're on Linux, you can download the binary for your distribution. And if you're on Windows, we even have support for you. So it doesn't matter what operating system that you're on, you're going to be able to use ODO like a pro. Next up, we've got a cheat sheet developed by my mentor, Jason Dobies. And it's going to give you a lot of basic commands for getting started with ODO. So essential things like ODO create, ODO catalog list components, all those different things that you're going to be using a lot. So you can feel free to download that PDF. It'll help you a lot when you're getting started. And then finally, we've got a tutorial for you, something called a Katacoda scenario. So what you'll be able to do is actually spin up an OpenShift cluster in your browser, live in your browser, instantly, and be able to either follow along with the guided lab that we have, or you can follow along with this demo. Either way, you can get some hands-on experience on using ODO and kind of see how it works and see all the possibilities that it has, because being able to use it for the past couple weeks, I've learned so much, and I'm so excited to dive into it and really talk about what ODO is. So ODO is a command line tool for creating and deploying applications on Kubernetes without having to understand a lot of complex Kubernetes concepts that come with deploying applications. So ODO allows you to concentrate on development instead of deploying. So you can create deployment configurations, build those configurations, create service routes, which we're going to be using OpenShift for some of our demos today. And you're going to see how easy it is to create those routes, and other Kubernetes and OpenShift resources that are all automated essentially with ODO. So it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to streamline your process and make you more efficient as a developer, because at the end of the day, what we want back is time. And ODO kind of gives us that by streamlining a lot of processes that are typically complex for developers. So what I want to talk about is the inner loop of development, because when we're going from simply a project to actually deploying our applications, it's very easy on a local machine. You know, you're writing your code in Visual Studio, you're building that, whether it's a Java project with like Maven or something, deploying that, running unit tests and debugging, and you're going around in that loop over and over and over again. But what happens when we go from simply like a local machine and local development to cloud native development is you've got so many more processes that make it much more complex. You're building with a Docker file, you're pulling, you're pushing from different repositories, and along the way, along all these steps, if you make one little error, one little typo, one little bug, you've got to restart all of that. So it's a pain, and ODO kind of allows you to streamline that process so that if you're going along that, you don't have to make all these mistakes, and you save time because you're able to deploy so much easier. So it speeds up that inner cycle. And as I said before, it saves you time, and that's what we're all about. So features that are new in ODO 2.0. Well, the biggest thing I want to explain today is what a dev file is. So a dev file is a portable YAML file that essentially allows you to describe your deployment environment. So this dev file is a portable YAML file, and you can use it on any of your OpenShift or Kubernetes clusters. It allows you to create a development environment without the need of configuring a new one every time you create a cluster, because that can take a lot of time, and we don't really want to have to do that if we have the ability to use a dev file. So what we can do and what we can describe with this dev file is predefined build and application runtimes, the images, of course. We can create predefined commands to run. So whether you're running a Node project or a Java project, we can include those default commands, very simple. And then projects to initially clone. So what we're going to do here actually is go out of the presentation when we're actually going to create a dev file from scratch, and we're going to look at all these different components. Some of these are schema version, which is the only property of a dev file which is actually required. We've got metadata for explaining what our dev file is about, starter projects, which you'll clone from a Git repo, components, and then finally commands. So commands are what you're gonna, they're gonna be the bulk of your dev file, and they're gonna explain different commands that you're gonna wanna run with your dev file and with your project. So we'll go in all of this, and I'll explain it from a real world perspective with a Node project. I'm going to switch here quickly from my presentation, and let's go ahead and actually create a dev file from scratch. So I'm going to hop in here in my terminal. Of course, we're on Mac. I love my Mac, but what we'll do is we'll hop into our documents, and let me see, I might have to delete an old folder. So let's make a new folder called DevNation. We love DevNation. DevNation rocks. And let's go ahead and hop in there. And what we're going to do is run the ODO create command. So that's the basis of ODO. That's where everything starts. That's where you create your components. It's kind of the start of everything. So what we'll do is it's going to bring up a interactive menu of different dev file components that we wish to create. And I'll go in a little bit more detail later on in this presentation of what components we have. But dev files essentially allow you to run Java and Node, officially supported, and Python. But we also have old sourced image components covering everything from Perl to PHP to .NET, a lot of different things. But for right now, we're going to create a dev file using Node.js. So we'll scroll down. It's going to ask us what we wish to name the dev file component. We can go ahead and use the default. In the namespace that we want the dev file component to be created in, again, we'll use the default. And it's going to go through a couple different stages of validation. So it's going to check if we have the dev file, if it exists, and it's going to pull that from a registry. And this is super important to note because something awesome about dev files is we can customize the registry which we're pulling from. So if you want to add new components, if you want to customize your components, you can simply add or remove registries, which is super awesome. But by default, we have this default dev file registry in which we're pulling from. And again, you see it's validated, and it's going to ask us if we want to download a starter project. For right now, since we have nothing to go off of, we're going to do that just so we can get a look at what the dev file looks like. So we've downloaded a starter project from this repository, and we should have it, hopefully, right in our folder right here. So if you have familiarity with JavaScript and Node, you should see some familiarity here. We've got our server.js, a test folder, some other things, but right here we can check it out. We've got this awesome little dev file hanging out in our folder. So let's go ahead and take a look with Vim, which is the superior text editing software. And we can see a couple components that we just looked at from the presentation. We've got the schema version, which is the only required part of a dev file. We've got metadata explaining some details and descriptions of what we have. So we've got an alpha for build Docker file and an alpha for deployment manifest, which I'm not going to go into today, but definitely cool things to take a look at later. We've got a starter project, which we just saw in the terminal. That's what we cloned from, so we can customize that. We've got the components of our dev file. So it looks like we're pulling the Node.js image. We've got a memory limit and endpoints. When we create a route for our application later on, we're going to be able to see this actually in action. But the biggest part, which I really want to show you, is the commands. So this is customizable, and it's going to be different for every kind of language that you're using. For Node, you see the very familiar npm install, and you see the very familiar npm start here, which are going to be used in our development environment. So you've got, of course, debug and test as extra features, but you can see that this portable YAML file, this dev file, describes our development environment. And for Node, it has all of the necessary components for a Node project. And what's awesome is that these dev files can be anything from, say, 3 lines or 300 lines. It's all up to you on how you want to customize it. But there's so much capability that I think it's really awesome that we have these dev files and we're able to use them. So what we're going to do now that we've talked about dev files is let's actually deploy an application. Let's deploy, say, like a front-end component and actually understand how we can use these dev files. So what we're going to do is clear our console and we're going to create a new folder. Let's build a weather application from a GitHub repository that we already have predefined. And so what we're going to do before we go ahead and do that is list the components that dev files have that are offered by dev files. So we'll go ahead and use the catalog of Odo to list the components that we have, if I can type properly. And so it'll take a second, and we'll see right here, here's everything that is covered by dev files. Of course, you see the default dev file registry that we talked about earlier. We've got multiple types of Java. Of course, we've got Java Quarkus, which we love here at Red Hat. We've got Node.js, which we're about to use here in a second. And we've got some OpenShift components, source to image components that are still around if you need them. But of course, there's more emphasis on the dev file components just because of how much you can really do with them. So what we'll go ahead and do now is we're going to create a new project with ODO project. And so there's some interlapping of OC, the command line tool, and ODO, which is awesome. But it's necessary to note that ODO isn't really a replacement for OC. It's kind of a supplement and allows you to do more with less, which is kind of a weird way to think about it. But it's really helpful when we're trying to deploy applications. So we'll use ODO project create to create a new project, and let's title it weather. And it's going to go ahead and create a new project called weather, and we're going to go into it automatically. What we have here is, so now we're in, let's create a new folder, or we already created it. Let's hop into it. And so now we've got just an empty folder. So if we didn't have a project already, it's okay because we can clone this repository in right now, which is a JavaScript weather application that's going to deploy a front end. And so now we have that in our folder. So let's go ahead and hop into that. And we see, just like before, traditional node components that we're already familiar with. And so now that we have this project and we're in this project right now in our local directory, let's go ahead and create a component configuration using the dev files that we had before. So we'll do ODO create. Remember, that's the basis of ODO. And we'll use the component Node.js. So instead of just hitting enter here and using the interactive menu, we can do it all from the command line. And we'll use Node.js, of course. And let's title it weather, if I can type properly. So what this is going to do is it's going to do the same validation that we saw before. Check the existence of a dev file. If it's compatible, pull it from the dev file registry and validate that. And that's really all you have to do, because ODO is doing all the complex Kubernetes and OpenShift processes for us with a dev file. And so what we'll do here is we need to have a way to access our deployed content. So once we actually push this using the ODO push command, which I'll talk about in a second, how are we going to access it? Well, routing is super easy, especially with OpenShift. And really all we have to do is create a URL with this command. So it's going to automatically generate us a name for our URL, tag for it, for the component weather, which we just created. So now that this is already done, this is really all we have to do before we type in ODO push. And ODO push, you're probably thinking of like a git push, and you're really not too far off, because ODO push is going to do a lot of different processes in order to get the dev file ready and start spinning up, say, like a pod and a lot of other Kubernetes resources to get your application from the source code that you already have, use a dev file configuration for it, and actually spin it up in your cluster to be ready to be used. So what it's going to do is it's going to wait for the component to start. When we looked at that dev file earlier, we saw it had a npm install and an npm start and a few other commands. Well, we're actually going to be executing those commands right now. So we can see executing install command to install the dependencies and everything that we need for our node project. And we'll see npm start once it's ready for that. So right here, we saw it executed the run command, and literally like that, we have our project running in our OpenShift cluster. And I think it's crazy that we went from project to deployed in so few commands. So right now, let's take a look at it using the URL that we created earlier. It gave us that automatic name, weather 3000. Sounds like some invention that someone's going to make one day, to like AI weather. And let's hop in our browser to actually see what this looks like and see if everything's working properly, because it looks like it's successfully pushed, and we have a pod running in our our OpenShift cluster. And so let's access it. So I'm going to share my Chrome real quick, and we'll actually be able to see it. So you should be able to see my Chrome, and let's paste in that URL that it gave us. There we go. We can see it running right now on the cluster. So of course the URL is a little bit wonky. We can fix that later. but we have this application running live, and we can use it to pull data and actually get the weather for our location. So let's type in a city for me, and I guess Edson, we're both in the 919, which is the area code of Raleigh, which is where one of the Red Hat towers is located at. So it's a great place to be, and let's go ahead and search what the weather is right now. So it looks like we've got heavy rain and humidity throughout the day, and it's currently 24 degrees. It's important to note, this is not Fahrenheit. We would be freezing. I would have more than one t-shirt on if it was Fahrenheit. This is Celsius, of course. But, yep, it's cool to see that live and in action. But, okay, let me put you in a perspective. Say we're a developer, and we need to make some changes to our application. Well, it's already running live, but we want to see that reflected live as well. So I'm going to open up my terminal again, and I'm going to run the command called odio watch. And what that's essentially going to do is it's going to keep track of our current directory. And if we make any changes to the code inside of that directory, it's going to automatically redeploy our entire project using odio push, but it's going to do it automatically for us. We don't have to go in there, do anything different. So we'll run the command odio watch, and it says waiting for something to change in the current directory where we're at. So let's go ahead and let's hop into Visual Studio, and let's go ahead and make a little change. So I'm going to open up the correct folder for where we are, Documents, DevNation, Weather, and we've got that weather app right there. So let's hop in that, and here we are. So I'm not sure why this is already open, but we've got everything, our entire folder right here on the left-hand side. It's the same folder which we were working on in the terminal, but since it's a Node.js project, let's hop in and let's edit something that, could be publicly accessible from that URL that we provided. So the index page, of course, index.html, this is very similar. This is what's going to be reflected from the front page. Of course, you saw the use this site to get your weather right above the button. Let's add in some text. This is completely random. Cedric is the best intern. Okay, we've got some text. We've made a change, and let's go ahead and save this. I'm not sure how that got there, but since we've made a change in our directory that we're working in, odio watch is going to automatically do an odio push, and it's going to do everything for us to have those changes reflected live on our deployed application. So let's wait a second. Actually, I'm going to show you real quick, the terminal, because it's doing some work here right now. As you can see, it is seeing that there was some changes up here at the top, that we've edited some files, and it's pushing that. It's pushing all the changes. It's doing an npm install and an npm start, doing everything that we did with the odio push again. And now it's back to waiting for something to change. So that means it's done what it has to do. And let's hop in Google Chrome to the same application, of course, you see with the weird URL. Let's do a refresh. Whoa! That's crazy. That's crazy. So it says Cedric is the best intern. Of course, that's what we did in our in our application, the changes that we made. And of course, if we wanted to see what the weather is at our other Red Hat location, let's type in Boston. We've got some light rain. So the application has been redeployed. The pod has been restarted. It has done the dev file commands that we have put in, or were actually auto-generated when we created our dev file, and it's kind of already done that for us. So the odio watch paired with a dev file has incredible possibilities, and that's just one of the many features I wanted to highlight with odio today. But we've got a lot to cover. One thing I do want to show is how we can migrate, as I said before on our agenda, a source to image component with odio 1.0 to odio 2.0 into a dev file. So what we can do is actually hop out of this weather app. Let's hop out of that, and let's create a new folder called source to image, and let's hop into that. And so say if we're working with a Java program, of course we can use a Java dev file component, or we can actually import, say, OpenJDK, which is going to be a source to image component. So now that we've imported that from, see if I can go back up here, the Red Hat registry, let's go ahead and annotate it. And so we can annotate that to make it accessible for ODO with the builder tag, so I can see that, hey, ODO, use this. This is a component that you can use. And now when we do our ODO catalog list, we'll be able to see that if I typed it right. Yep. So you've got our dev file components up here, and check that out. We've got OpenJDK just chilling right now in our source to image OpenShift components. And of course, it's supported now since we've imported it. So that's awesome. So that's the OpenJDK component that we'll be working with today. But let's go ahead and import a project. So I've got this OpenShift Evangelist Wild West backend. It's a Java project that is the backend for a front end, but we don't have to get into that right now. We'll just look at the backend right now. And let's hop in there and see what it's looking like. So we've got our source folder, of course, which is going to have all of the files that we need to compile with Maven. So we can do that right now, actually. Just use Maven package to build the source files and create a jar. And that jar file, the .jar, is what we're going to be able to use to create the component configuration. So we've got that build success. If we look at the folder again, now we've got a target folder, which is going to have our .jar. And so we'll hop in and we'll actually create a component with that. So we'll use OpenJDK 18, of course, call it backend, and let's point to that target and use, should be something like Wild West.jar. And that's going to create our component configuration. So let's run that. Oh, check it out. So ODO is actually telling us that we need to add a source to image flag when we're running this command. So let's go ahead and add that. Nothing bad about that. It's just saying, hey, there's dev file options available. We prefer you use that, but you can still continue using your source to image. You just need to make sure you're using this flag. So we'll validate that. And now that we've got this component created, we can either do an ODO push and continue with that and deploy that, or we can use a utility that comes with ODO 2.0, and it's called convert to dev file. And what that's going to do is essentially package our component up into a dev file and have that ready for us to use. So as we can see, dev file is available in your current directory. So if we were to hit ls again, we can see a dev file has now been created. So this is awesome. And if we were to take a look at that, we can see that, of course, schema version, metadata, all those simple components that we have, all these properties of a dev file. And then down here, we can actually see the image that we've imported earlier. So everything's coming full circle. Now we have a dev file from the component that we imported. And there's some instructions that'll come with doing this command. Of course, you got to do an ODO push. And kind of finish that off. But as far as migrating something from source to image to a dev file, it's simply that easy. And I guess there's a little bit of time that'll take to do that because it's having to create the Kubernetes resources. So we can kind of pause that or wait for that. And the last thing I want to show through this demo is the Minikube and Kubernetes compatibility that is provided with ODO. So Edson, do we have time to cover that real quick? Just to make sure.
Yeah, we still have a couple of minutes. Yeah.
All right, sweet. I forgot to set a timer. So awesome. So what we can do is I'm gonna go ahead and start my Kubernetes real quick, and I'm gonna share that extra terminal real quick because I think it's awesome that we now have official support for Kubernetes. And so I kind of just want to show that before we finish off. So we're going to do a Minikube start to start our local Kubernetes cluster, and we're going to wait for that. And the instructions to start or create a component and deploy that on Kubernetes is really similar to OpenShift. There's just small differences, which I'm going to cover here in a second, because to define a route and to create that route, we're actually going to have to bring up ingress IP. And if you're interested, there's definitely some resources on odo.dev about the ingress IP and why it's important. But we'll wait for that for 1 second for it to bring it up, and then we'll go ahead and start and create a new project. Looks like we're getting an error real quick that Minikube is paused. So I'm going to do it one more time. And hopefully we'll be able to do it on Minikube before we run out of time here. But we'll wait for that for 1 second. And as I said again, if you're looking at more information about running all of your projects on Minikube, definitely, or Kubernetes in general, definitely head over to odo.dev because we have resources that parallel not only OpenShift but also Kubernetes. So we'll just finish up waiting for Minikube to start. And then we'll create a new project. And for this, we're actually going to use, again, a Node.js project. A lot of JavaScript today, but hopefully that's okay with everyone. Big fan. But of course, we covered Java today as well. So let's just wait for this to finish up. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and find our ingress IP. And for us, it's right here. And so that's going to spit it out. But to continue, let's go ahead and do another Odo project create. Let's pick a new name instead of what we had before. Minikube testing. So that's going to create this new project, and it's going to have us already in it. And let's again list the catalog for all the components that we have available, because you're going to notice that it's actually a little bit different than OpenShift. We've actually just got the dev file components and not the OpenShift components that we had from before. So it's a little bit less, but we still have the most important things: Java, Node, Python, for creating our applications. So real quick, we're going to hop in that DevNation folder and make a new folder called Mini. Hop in there, and let's go ahead and clone a Node.js example component into that folder. And so this is the same the same project file I think that we used at the beginning when I was showing you dev files. So from there you can see all of our basic parts of a Node project, and we're going to do the ODO create command again. And instead of using the interactive menu, we'll use Node.js, and let's give it a name. Let's call it my Node.js. So we're going to validate that we have the dev file, pull it from the registry, and now it's almost ready. But when we pulled up the ingress IP earlier, it's for a reason, because when we're creating a URL on Kubernetes, we actually have to define the ingress URL when we create a URL. So we'll do ODO URL create and give it that host flag. And actually, I kind of forgot what the IP was. So let's bring that up again. Awesome. So let's create a URL to access our content once it's deployed. And we'll create that. Oh, I might have already done that. Yeah, sorry about that. We'll create the URL with the host flag. And let's put in our IP, our ingress IP for that. And so there we go. We've created a URL to access our component once it's created. And as you can see, when we take a look at the URLs that we have with ODO URL list, it's already created. And that's going to be local on my machine. And then all we have to do is, of course, follow the instructions and do an ODO push. And that's going to deploy our source code for this Node project. So comes full circle, you know, whether you're using OpenShift or whether you're using Kubernetes, ODO is a fantastic way to kind of go in and speed up your development process and kind of get it running from project to deployed. And I know that developers like me and developers everywhere around the world and around the DevNation family will kind of appreciate this, and hopefully we can save you some time. So again, my name is Cedric Clyburn. I'm so happy to have had the chance to kind of give a brief overview. I wish I could go in more depth about ODO, but thank you so much for your time, for being here. I really appreciate it. If you want to reach out, I just created a Twitter. I'm not really sure how to use it, but it's above there, and my GitHub. And stay tuned to the Red Hat Developer channel and DevNation. But yeah, thanks, Edson.
Awesome, Cedric. Yeah, if you're a tech person, you should be on Twitter. And if you're watching this, you have the tip. You can follow Cedric, so he'll be sharing a lot of different technology stuff. And Cedric, also, thank you very much for this awesome presentation. I hope we can book you for another session talking about audio deep dive. Yeah, everything worked perfectly today. And I'm sure also that the OpenShift team agrees that you're the best intern ever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions today, but thank you very much for watching this today. And the DevNation family gives Cedric a huge thank you and a round of applause for this successful presentation. See you soon in our other upcoming DevNation Tech Talks. Bye.